Welcome to the Two Money Guys podcast. I am the middle-aged money man, Robert Rio, along with your money geek, Michael Dinich, and we have an incredible show for you this week. Today we have Jim Thalman and Krzysztof Pietroszek. They have been working together to create a movie that you can experience in a way that you have never done before. They're bringing the latest in VR and filmmaking technology together in their latest project, and we will be deep diving into that in a minute. As a matter of fact, the project was so interesting to us that it became an extended interview. And I can't wait to hear what they have up their sleeve for us. But first, let's roll that intro. Before we get into the interview, I would like to thank our sponsor, JRC Insurance Group. JRC works with over 50 top-rated insurance companies to match their clients with the most affordable life insurance options available. They are working harder than anyone to get you the coverage you need and deserve for the price that suits your budget. Call 866-790-6494 or visit jrcinsurancegroup.com for your free no-obligation quote. Again, call 866-790-6494 or visit jrcinsurancegroup.com for your free no-obligation quote.
Okay, I have Jim Thalman and Krzysztof Pietroszek. Hopefully I pronounced his name correctly. I apologize if I got it wrong, to all the listeners out there. And I'm so excited to have these two gentlemen on the show. You may recognize Jim. We did a success story interview on the blog a couple months ago, and he shared so much information that I think Tony Robbins is going to have to keep an eye on his back because he shared so much wonderful information. And so I'm just really thrilled to have him back and have Krzysztof on the show because they are at the forefront of some groundbreaking technology and a new way to, I really think is going to revolutionize films and the way we view and watch films. So I don't butcher the technology end of things. Krzysztof, why don't you tell us a little bit about the project and this amazing new technology you're working with?
Sure. So what we are doing is best described as an implementation of a holodeck from Star Trek. The idea is to create an entire new way of experiencing and capturing films, the way which would allow you to walk inside the film. And I mean, literally, you would put on a VR headset, virtual reality headset, and walk inside the frame of the film. You can sit on a chair which is on set. You can see the actors from any perspective. You can become one of the actors, one of the characters in the film. So it is very new technology. As far as we know, it was never done in this context the way we do it. So it is the first time we combined the holographic technology to capture holographs of actors with a photogrammetry of the set. So you have a realistic look of a set. So that's the technology. But I think the most important part of it is that it will completely change the way we tell stories. Right now, we have over 100 years of a history of way the stories are told, the cinematic language and the grammar. And we are used to that conventions. They're great. It's a wonderful history of cinema. But all these conventions break when you start to do holographic experiences. Everything is different. There is no cut. There is no close-ups. There is no choice of shots. Everything becomes viewer dependent. So as a viewer walking inside this experience, you can decide that you watch the action from a close-up just by coming close to the actors, or from a distance just by going away from the actors, right? So everything is different, and we basically feel like Brother Lumiere were feeling when they were creating the first movies. It's very, very exciting, very new, very experimental, and I think it will be a completely different form of entertainment than the cinema. It will not replace cinema. Cinema, like radio, like novels, like paintings, it will always be there as a form of art and entertainment. But this will be yet another form which we are creating.
So what type of device would people watch this on?
So there are two ways to really experience it, but the most accessible way is to watch it on a virtual reality headset. And it can be actually any kind of headset. So it can be a headset connected to a computer, or it can be a headset which is made of your cell phone, your smartphone, right? Right now you can buy a $100 device, put your smartphone into it, and watch that kind of experience within that. There are certain limitations depending on the technology, but in principle, it's possible to on a smartphone or on a computer headset for virtual reality. Another way to experience it is something called cave virtual reality systems, which are installed in many museums and places like that. And we will see probably a growth of that kind of experiences, like walk-in experiences similar to cinema. In fact, in Washington, D.C., where I am, there was a famous example of that by Inaritu called Carnegie Arena. It's not done in a technology we are doing, but it is a stage where you walk inside in a headset and you can see the animated characters around. So really, there is two ways to watch it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And those virtual reality headsets are really taking off. Do you have a sense of how large the virtual reality headset market is at this point?
Well, there are different predictions, and Gartner, for example, predicted that it will be $120 billion industry by 2025. This is a very large number. So it is, I think it's a little bit over optimistic. The adoption rates are not as fast as it was predicted. There is, in terms of the high-end headsets, there is already over 5 million sold, but everybody have a smartphone, and a smartphone is the device you can use. You just need a little additional equipment for below $100. So it's a huge market. It's a very interesting new potential, but the most interesting parts will happen, I think, within the entertainment industry, and not necessarily gaming. Many people think it will be gaming, but I think it will be more entertainment industry, the consumption of content, at least at the beginning.
Oh, that's interesting. So how does filming a movie like this differ from filming a traditional movie?
Oh, it's so different. It's every aspect of it is completely different, as Jim might speak about also. Right now, because of the technology, it's very restrictive in terms of movement of actors, for example, in terms of how many actors you can have in the same time on a set. We use the let's call it old green screen technology to compensate for some of the issues you have when you're capturing holograms. But really, it's multi-camera setup. So actors are surrounded with cameras, and they can move within a very confined space, let's say 7 by 7 feet. And all actions have to happen there, and you have to record them separately and then combine them together. So it is actually not even a solved problem how to combine the sides of the holograms from each camera properly. So this is something which we are working on. The solutions which are available on the market are actually not by film companies, but by technology companies. Intel and Microsoft are two top players in it. They have stages which costed tens of millions of dollars to build and still require a lot of post-production. So it's very interesting business opportunity, and some companies look into it to actually develop lower cost systems like that, because there is a need on the market for holograms because of the, for example, the Apple iPhone developing this augmented reality technologies. So I think it's a very interesting moment, and we are looking into it too. There is a number of smaller startups which try to solve that.
From an acting perspective, it's kind of interesting, though, because although the technology is so advanced, we're almost going back to our roots of theater in the round, where you'll have audience around you in a 360-degree arc watching the aspect, the entire performance. And that, in itself, was a thrilling and exciting experience for myself and my lovely leading lady, Caroline Duncan, that we had to do the entire film in one take. No cuts. No, I forgot this was not allowed. It was not possible. We did our prep. We did our homework. We came in. We rehearsed with Krzysztof extensively the day before we started shooting, and then had dozens of conversations leading up to the shoot. But then once you hear a roll sound, the gloves came off and we went full tilt as far as generating an organic, impulsive, instinctual, heartfelt, hopefully nuanced and detailed performance full of lust and love and envy and rage and emotion and revenge and all of the things that make us human beings living really on the edge of something that is insecure and unknown to both these lovers that haven't seen each other in years, and this is their first reconnection, and how it plays out. And it takes you down took us down so many roads that were completely unanticipated, because you see the text and it's easy to think about text. But then once text starts tumbling out of raw human emotion, it changes, and it changes dramatically, which is really fun for actors, of course, but I suspect will be really exciting and exhilarating for audiences to experience in this new technology.
So for the audience that's watching this on a virtual reality device, the ability to go in and change the perspective and the angle, will they pick up like new things from the story because of that? Does that change how they perceive the story or the story they actually receive by being able to go in and move around within it?
It actually is exactly that. So you can watch the same experience multiple times, and every time it's a different experience. You can take position of a certain actor, and then sometimes this technology is called the ultimate empathy machine, because you are no longer an observer, you become one of them, right? So you are the character, and the actor is talking directly to you, standing in front of you. So it's a completely different experience. The only thing I can compare it to, like Jim did, is participatory live theater, which not many people experienced. Actually, it's not a form which is commonly accessible. So it's basically a completely new way of experiencing. Another interesting thing about it is what Jim also talked about a little bit, is that actors tend to be, especially TV and film actors, tend to be used to short bursts of takes of their emotions and then a cut, right? Here, entire experience is continuous. So if you are not an amazing actor, and Jim and Caroline are amazing actors, that's why I chose them among 360 people, 360 actors who applied, you can't pull it off. There is no way you will pull it off. You can't be in a character for 17 minutes without a break if you're not an amazing actor. So that means that if this technology becomes popular, really good actors will be stars, as opposed to having a lot of, nowadays actors which are not that good actors, but they, for example, very good looking and are stars. They will not be able to pull it off, because it's really a comeback to the theater and the acting workshop, the ability to be in character, the ability to pause, to pace yourself in this form. It's amazing how the circle of history is coming back to the roots of the almost ancient theater stage through technology.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we had this kind of shift over the years where, the CGI graphics and everything got so good that people were starting to worry, well, maybe this is going to put actors all out of work. And then, I know that there was, when everything started moving to the 4K experience, everyone started working, well, this looks too good, and it's hard to stand up to the scrutiny of being filmed under, 4K. And they thought maybe that was going to impact people's careers. But you're actually seeing a shift where this technology is going to create more work for skilled actors, opposed to them being replaced by CGI.
Yes, and I am actually, I research artificial intelligence. I do also technical research, and I don't believe in the hype of creating replacements for actors. If we ever succeed in creating artificial human, then the actors, writers, and the creative people will be the last to be replaced, not the first, because there is so much subtlety, so much complexity in what actors are doing, that it's just not capturable. It cannot be simulated that easily. You can simulate maybe a doctor's appointment with artificial intelligence, but creating such a emotional depth with so many ambiguities, it's right now out of question for artificial intelligence. It's just not going to happen soon. And I'm actually very sure of it. So yes, sure, CGI can create artificial characters, and we see that all the time. And it will be great for action movies when there are, very little action and very fast action. But for actually deep experiences, the cathartic experiences of live theater and deeply emotional movies, I think there will be more work for actors, not less, for human.
Yeah, and Jim, you're finding that as well?
Without a doubt. No matter what industry you're in, I think there will be the Cassandras and naysayers of the end of the world is here and change is going to destroy us all and, all of that malarkey. But the truth of the matter is, and especially being at the forefront and, knee deep into this new experience, it only solidifies the belief system that at the end of the day, we all go to the theater or to the movies or to a concert or to a museum to reconnect with ourselves and with humanity. It's that raw human emotion that it's the fiber of everything. It's what pulls us all together. And that is unstoppable. I could stand in front of, I always go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the first painting I see is, or go say hello to, is The Triumph of Marius by Titian. And I think it's from 1872 or 1862. And I could stand in front of that painting for hours. I did as a kid, as a young student, as a college student, and now as an adult. There's something that happens. It's the same thing when, I go to Lincoln Center to the theater, or Pershing Square to the theater, or I go sit in a movie house with 1,000 strangers. And before you know it, you hear the sniffles, and then the sniffles become contagious. Or you hear the laughter that starts as a chuckle and then becomes this uproarious, overwhelming chant of euphoria shared by complete strangers. Because at the end of the day, we all as human beings, no matter what we do, are faced with such obstacles and pressures to be strong and to take care of our families and to get the job done and to do right by your friends, by your family, by your company, by the corporation, whatever the case. It doesn't leave that much room for raw emotion. So it has to have an outlet. So where does that outlet come? It's through the arts. And it doesn't matter if it's opera, ballet, theater, film, television, when television is magnificent, and there is a lot of magnificent television on, or this new technology that will, I think, change the scope and the participation level of the art form. Because this, all of a sudden, really, when Krzysztof said the true empathy machine, I was like, it's a stroke of genius. It truly is. It allows us to feel and to feel safe, and we could cry as loud as we want or laugh as loud as we want, because you're either in a darkened theater, so no one will see your reaction. You don't have to worry about judgment. Or in this case, with the glasses, the goggles on, where it's you and, in this case, Caroline and myself having this heartfelt moment between each other. And at the end of the day, you could build worlds with CG, you could build armies with CG, but you cannot build the raw power of the human condition or the human heart. What we feel, how we feel, is a big part of what separates us from every other species in the world. And that, to me, has happened, since the dawn of time. My mentor, Steve Easton, always used to say, you guys are the shamans of your generation. Don't forget it, and don't ever denigrate it. And that, in a big part, has always carried me through the rough patches that invariably will happen in this business.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way. I always love, this is why I love talking to you, because you always have such a wonderful way of describing everything. It's just mesmerizing. So thank you for that. So how do you think this is going to change like movie theaters? I mean, obviously this is starting to take off. I've been seeing, even prior to this podcast and, knowing about this technology, I've been seeing a ton of virtual reality headset commercials, on television lately. So this is obviously taking off. What effect do you think that might have on traditional film?
I think it will be a separate form. As I said, I don't think it will have a negative influence on entertainment in the same sense, on cinema, in the same sense as, let's say, computer games did not really negatively affect the revenues of cinemas. The revenues still grow worldwide every year, slowly, but they do grow, even though there is more and more games and more other forms of entertainment. The question is whether the cinemas will adapt to this technology in certain ways. So, for example, multiplexes will have dedicated VR rooms. This is slowly happening. For example, National Geographic just deployed in DC, deployed a VR cinema. It's a little bit early to say how it will go, if it will be more home-based experience or public experience, like more social, maybe both. The reason is that even though we think about the technology as very advanced, we really are at the time of Brother Lumiere. We're really making this film of a train arriving at the station right now. We're at this moment. When you try the goggles, you might be initially fascinated by the experience, but then soon you say, well, the goggles are not that comfortable and they narrow your view a little bit. You see 90 degrees instead of the whole field of view. Well, yes, that's true. In the same sense as Brother Lumiere had a camera which was of size of a half of a room and couldn't really easily move it, right? I'm exaggerating a little bit. But this is temporary. What will happen very soon is that the goggles will be very light, maybe even invisible. Maybe we'll be projecting on retina directly from like remote projectors in cinema. It's possible technically. Maybe there will be little glasses or things like that. So there's these technological barriers will be overcome, and the question is how the stories will be told and what kind of stories will be told. What will be better for this kind of medium, which is different than worrying about the current technicalities. If I might add one thing to the previous thing which Jim said, because I had a little follow-up, I think I just want to conquer this or fight with this idea of artificial actors created as replacing real actors. Computers cannot create meaning, period. They don't create semantics. They operate on syntax. They operate on numbers. They will never be able, by their very nature, to create any meaning. Humans create meaning. So there is no way the computers will ever create any meaning. They might simulate it, but we will be more and more able to detect that falsehood. It's like a bad actor who simulates the emotion rather than feel the emotion. We can detect that on screen, and we'll be able to detect that forever. This even has a name. It's called Uncanny Valley. There is this basically means that the closer the CGI actor is to the reality, the more we feel something is wrong with it. Something is not real about it. And I think this will stay for a long time. I don't know how long, maybe one day we'll solve it, but for a long time, the actors will be irreplaceable because they create meanings. As humans, we are able to do that, and machines cannot do that. They are numbers. They're very powerful. They're great to use, but they're just tools and numbers.
Yeah, there's something definitely about that. I mean, I think probably the classic example of that is probably Star Wars, right? When they made the prequels, they started using a lot more CGI, and it was all, stunning. But the fans just didn't really connect with it in the same way. They almost preferred the puppets and the animatronics and the old way of doing things, even though technically they weren't as stunning and they're actually maybe more so flawed. They just connected with them more than the CGI.
Yeah, and I think it will stay, especially in this form of volumetric filmmaking or volumetric storytelling, when the whole experience is so similar to live theater that it has to have this aura, this aura, this experience of being there with a human being rather than generated.
And so you see this as really not so much replacing traditional movies or traditional media, but you see this as opening up a whole new category, a whole new form of entertainment. So you'll have movies, you'll have video games, and then you'll have these kind of like 4D hologram style movies.
Yes, and I think it will be a merge of cinema and video games. So there will be a certain level of interaction you can have. One of the versions of the film we are making is when you can become a character of Vera and Jim is playing toward you. So it's kind of, if you think about it, it's hard to visualize it, how you would become this character. So what we are doing is we are using a spatial input device which will create your hands exactly as Vera hands, looking exactly like Vera's hands. And when you move them, you will actually move your hands in this film. You will see them. You will see that you're in a dress. You will see that you have gloves. And in our version, it will not be interactive, so you can't shake Jim's or Robert's, his character is named Robert, hand. But in the future, I can imagine literally interacting with the actor while we are playing it. It actually was described, this form of entertainment was described in a novel by Neil Stevenson called The Diamond Age. And I directly took it from there. I read science fiction novels and implement what is said, what is described in them. And this technique is called reactive, when you have an actor playing against you in virtual reality, or with you in virtual reality, and you are a viewer, but you are an active participant, right? So this will be something in between games and cinema, but neither of those. A new form of.
And when was that book written?
In 1993 or something around that time, 20 years ago. It's kind of
that's cool.
Fast how it, it used to take 30, 40 years to implement things which were mentioned in a science fiction novel. Now it takes less and less time. Science fiction has to catch on to the technology.
Yeah. My grandfather always used to say, if you want to see the future, just go back and read, science fiction from 20 years ago. So that's cool that we're seeing that technology.
And we see it. I'm sorry to interrupt. We see that on a regular basis. One of the wildest things, I remember the original Blade Runner. The digital advertisements, the moving advertisement on the billboards, and thinking how wild that was. Well, Ridley Scott came from an advertising background before he was making movies. And then here we go, 40 years later, those digital billboards are all over the world, or at least all over the nation, which is wild. It's to see. It's almost like someone has to imagine something, say it can be, it'll influence a generation that will go out and then make it so.
I have actually a follow-up on this example. In the new Blade Runner, there is a scene where Colger is merged with a holographic artificial intelligence friend of the main character. And the merge is not perfect, right? So it's shown as if the merge between the hologram and the real person to give her body is imperfect, and it's like shifting a little bit. If you watch the movie, you would know what I'm talking about. And I was watching it, I was like, that's interesting, because we actually solved that problem. And today we could get a better quality merge of these holograms with that person than they show as a future achievement in a science fiction movie. So sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the science fiction is behind the current technology.
Wow, that's really cool. So what is a story that you would love, when this technology gets, perfected a little bit more, what's a story that you would love to tell with this technology?
Well, I have many ideas. One of my biggest dreams, might be surprising a little bit, is to create Les Miserables musical in this technology, because I think that the biggest power of this technology is to move people to places that are otherwise impossible. So moving them in different times, for example. I think cinema is very good in creating realistic experiences in contemporary stories, and of course also period pieces. But anything which happens in the past, if you could experience it directly, that would be something which is extremely powerful, because we can't travel in time and we will never be able to go back in time. But this technology would allow us to do that. And I can maybe say something quite scary, but when I say experience it in a far future, I mean literally. So what I mean by that, there is experiments happening at the University of Southern California and other places where where researchers are suppressing brain's ability to differentiate between reality and virtual reality. And if you do that, the brain is no longer perceiving virtual reality as artificial. It believes it's real. Okay. So what it means is that in the entertainment, you could have an experience of feeling as if you are really there, and experiencing that volumetric holodeck experience as if you were moved in time. Your brain will not be able to say, well, this is just an experience. Of course, it is scary because it could be used for many negative things. But it is also fascinating that we could get that almost, hallucinogenic LSD kind of experience without using any drugs. It's going to be a technology. Right, so that's one type of stories I would like to say. I would like to make. Another one is the future. I'm really trying to get rights to Kurt Vonnegut's story "To Be or Not to Be." It's a short story. I'm literally trying for like 10 years to get the rights because somebody is holding on to these rights and not creating a movie. If I get that, this will be the next film I want to shoot in this technology, which happens in the future in overpopulated Earth. So all kinds of stories, and I think maybe the least popular ones will be the contemporary stories in the technology for a while, but maybe, there are different filmmakers. They all have different ideas what should be told.
And when do you expect this movie to release? When can we get our virtual hands on it?
We think that it will take at least half a year. So our plan is to release it to the festival circle this summer. That will depend on our talks with some Hollywood studios who offered to improve the quality of the volumetric capture we have. If it happens that it will be slightly delayed, but we will have a better quality holograms captured in stages which cost tens of millions of dollars. But yeah, the current plan is to go through Festival Circle and then release to public in 2020, probably mid 2020. This is an idea.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, will you have to, because this is so new, will you have to spend time on the film circuit? I mean, will you have to spend time educating the people about the technology and how to embrace it?
So for the experience itself, anybody who played a VR game will find it familiar. The difference will be that this is not a game; it's a story, and it looks realistic. It looks like a film, not a game. From that perspective, not really. It's more like a learning curve for a typical use of a VR headset. For the film industry, that's more interesting. It's actually very fascinating because even the smartest people I know from the film industry don't immediately get it, right? It's so new that you have to explain it multiple times what you really mean by that. Everybody associated with 360 video, so looking around in a film. But when I say, well, you can walk inside it, it's kind of like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean walking inside the stage? And this is the connections they have to make. So I always make this comparison with a holodeck because it's really that. You can walk around this film. There is also a fascinating technology called redirected walking, which allows you to literally walk forever within a confined space. So let's say you have a larger room, like 12 by 12 feet, or maybe slightly larger than that. And let's say it's a scene in this movie tells you to walk from here through the forest to the other side of the forest, right? So if you use a headset and you just walk, you would bump into the wall of the room you are in, right? But this technique allows you to actually walk forever straight, even though you're in confined space. It's absolutely fascinating. It uses an optical illusion of shifting your view a little bit that you cannot perceive it. And basically what happens is that you are walking in circle in a room, but you feel you are walking straight through the forest. And that opens another opportunities, right? You can basically make non-linear stories. You can have stories which happen, you go from one room to another. There's another story happening somewhere else. It might be part of another complex narrative, a little bit like Tarantino movies, which are non-linear, but in a different way. They can become episodic. You can have something, some cue happening here, some other moment happening here, and then you have to manage it to create a coherent story arc. So it's really a very, very fascinating, from writing perspective, from storytelling perspective, medium.
That's awesome. And Jim, will that change how actors and people looking to get into the industry will need to train and hone their skills?
I'm not sure if it'll change what their training will be, because those of us who go through the educational channels are all trained on stage first. And that is a big part of the actor's process. You need to get up there on stage, trip, stumble, fall, fail, get up again, do it again, and keep doing it until you get good enough to do it professionally. So I don't think that'll change, but I think, and this is already in occurrence amongst my peer sets, we continually train. We continually re-educate ourselves. I personally force myself every single year to take a class or a workshop or to participate in something. Doesn't necessarily have to be acting related, but it must come in direct contrast to my current belief systems. It has to challenge me in a way that says, okay, either accept new information or hold steadfast and prove that the old information was the proper way. And I think actors, for the most part, and artists as all, and it doesn't really matter whether you're an actor or a writer or a filmmaker or, a painter or a sculptor, the ability to and willingness to challenge yourself, to keep looking deeper and in different directions and forcing yourself to learn new things, which is one of the aspects of acting that I find to be absolutely joyful. It forces me to learn things that I would have never, ever even been curious about had it not been for that role. Like the boatman song, the Volga boatman song in this movie. I had never even heard of it. And then the deeper I go, the more did I learn. This is a song sung in villages and schools and across the nation. Everybody knows the song, which is totally, of course, threatening because now my singing is, it's questionable to say the least, though it's done with great passion and zeal. I think those of us, so to answer your question in a much more direct manner, those of us who are willing to look at things from a different perspective, willing to educate ourselves and learn new things, will thrive in this environment. Those who are stubborn, who consider themselves to know everything or all they need to know, who are unwilling to budge, will become extinct. And that's Darwinism at its best.
Yeah, and I think you see that in a lot of industries, and I think that's a good just life lesson. You always kind of the classic quote from Wayne Gretzky's, "You got to skate to where the puck's heading." And we see that in the industry, when we did a lot of silent movie stars didn't end up becoming movie stars when sound came out. Right. So a lot of people weren't able to adjust to the new technology and they kind of got left behind. And the technology is growing at such a rapid rate. I mean, we're now in, science fiction territory with Star Trek style holodecks.
Yes, I agree with Jim completely. And as I said, I think this will be a comeback to the real acting skills as opposed to just good looks with one-liner deliveries. So the better the actors are trained and able to be in a character, the more success they can have in this format. However, I think there is a significant change in the technical side of the team. For example, sound recording becomes a very interesting problem because now you can walk inside the stage, right? So you can listen to it from any perspective. How do you record that? Even if you created the holograms, right, the visuals, how do you record sound which sounds good from any perspective? This becomes a huge challenge, and it's actually not fully solved. So this is very interesting how this training will be adapted by universities. And actually, American University is one of the first which teaches that. That's why we have some interest from the Hollywood studios, because they were shocked that we are already teaching this technology, which doesn't really even yet fully exist. It's on the edge. I don't think any other school is actually offering classes in immersive filmmaking.
So I'm sorry, what school is teaching?
I'm a professor at American University in Washington, D.C.
Okay, and they're on the forefront of this, and they're teaching this there.
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. Wow, this is the coolest thing. I can't wait to check this out. So, if someone wanted to buy one of these devices because they're excited about this, what's the device that you think is going to make it? What's the company that you think is going to be the Dell or Apple of virtual reality devices?
Well, the competition is quite clear. So HTC Vive versus Oculus. Oculus is owned by Facebook. Both are very good devices. The competition exists, but is kind of irrelevant. So it's a fight of two big giants. Initially, in the short term, as we observe, the smartphone-based virtual reality is probably going to be the most popular. In a long term, the devices from Oculus and HTC are probably going to take over. We are waiting for a very interesting device. So this is very technical, what I will say, but it's somewhat important. The problem with these devices, and especially for the volumetric filmmaking, is the ability or not of these devices of being tracked in a 3D space. So if we want to have walking inside the film, we have to know where you are in your reality, in actual physical reality. And for example, smartphone-based virtual reality headsets cannot do that yet. So it is essential to be able to actually know where you are. And only HTC Vive right now delivers that to a full extent, to a room size VR experience. So from when we deploy this technology, this film, we're specifically using HTC Vive. You can still experience that in different devices, but you will not be able to really physically walk. You will have to teleport yourself to different points of view, which is a little bit different. It's a less immersive experience. But there is a very interesting devices coming out. It's called Oculus Quest, which is basically a small headset, standalone headset, which has the so-called inside-out tracking, so ability to track you. And I think this will be the winner, probably followed up by competition, but this kind of a device, which doesn't require a very expensive computer and a lot of cables, but you just put it on and you walk around in a confined space and you are warned that not to bump into walls. For volumetric filmmaking, this is the device. So I would wait with a purchase of anything until spring 2019 when this device is released.
That's good advice. Do you have a sense of, how much those type of devices or what that might come out at on a price point wise?
Oh, yeah. So the devices themselves are not very expensive. It starts around $300 for Oculus Go to $700 for the high-end HTC Vive. So it's kind of like buying a smartphone. The problem is that for HTC Vive, to be able to really use it, you have to have a very good computer. So if you're a gamer, then you are fine. You connect it and it works. If you are not a gamer, then your computer is probably too slow to really support it. That's why these devices, which are standalone, like Oculus Go, are better because you basically get everything in one device at price of $300.
Okay, so with that, you don't need a computer or an Xbox. You can just buy that device and be up and watching these movies.
Exactly, and with the Oculus Quest, this will be the case. I think the price was not released, but it will be around $500, which is a self-contained device, which allows you also to walk around. Right? So this is,
and that's not bad. I mean, it's a little bit of money, but I mean, for the experience, that's one of those things where, you're going to spend a little bit, but it's going to create an experience. So, it might be similar to a TV or it might be similar to, something else you might splurge on. But if you really look at the price per hour of entertainment, the price will be quite low. Like one of the best values in entertainment is actually video games right now, right? You can buy a video game for, $60 and spend, 200 hours playing those games. It's actually a great value in entertainment.
Well, and that will all depend on the content. If the content is interesting enough, then this investment into the hardware will pay off. Right now, we see very little content. This is a chicken and egg situation, right? We are one of the first, or maybe the first, creating volumetric films. The VR games, number of VR games compared to number of games is a small fraction. But because the technological companies are investing heavily into lowering the cost of devices, we are positive. We think that it will actually take off and the content will be better and better and more content will be available.
That's great. Okay, so I think is there anything else you want to tell us about the film or the technology, or any questions about the film or technology I haven't asked?
Actually didn't describe what would happen, right? Like, how do you actually experience it, right? So I spoke about it a little bit, but basically what happens, you download this app. You can think about it like app or a game. You can literally, it will be on Steam, for example, it will be like a game. And then you put on a headset and then you choose, what do you want to actually do? You can go into the holodeck and walk around the actors while they are playing. You can become one of the actors in the holodeck, seeing your hands and interacting with the other actor to a certain degree. You can go to a virtual cinema and watch the 2D version of this film in a traditional cut with all the dolly in and close-ups with amazing performance by Jim and Caroline. Or you can choose to watch it from a static point of view, like a sitting position, looking around and seeing the bar where we shot that in Manhattan and seeing the actors playing. And this is, I think, interesting because for a price of one, you get 3-in-1 experience, or even more in terms of variations. And this is unique. This was never done before, that you can experience the same story in 3 different mediums. I am seriously thinking now about adding a podcast. So basically make that story completely just audio additionally on top of having these visual experiences as a fourth way of experiencing that. So I think this is unique.
Yeah, it sounds it. How about you, Jim? Is there anything that I've failed to ask that I should?
Well, I don't know. We've covered a lot of ground, and I hope your viewers have enjoyed it. One thing I do want to say is we are literally standing on the edge of a brand new frontier. And I know I sound a little Trekkian, but hey, I'm a Star Trek geek, and there's nothing wrong with that in my eyes. But we're pushing into such unknown territory that is so exciting and unpredictable and wild, and we're at the what I call the forefront of a quantum leap. From an artistic standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, from a technological standpoint, a cinematic and a gaming standpoint, that I think I know a lot of your listeners are financially motivated individuals. And I think there needs to be a real consideration, more than just entertainment value, of the purchase of this and the enjoyment of this, because we're the first into right now a multi-billion-dollar market space, and we're the first ones there. But I would implore some of your listeners to consider investment in these types of movies. If that's something that piques your curiosity or something that you would like to explore, I sincerely and emphatically will state, feel free to reach out to both Krzysztof and myself to have a discussion, because Krzysztof is thinking light years ahead of everyone else. I'm having an absolute blast in this space, and I think together as a team, we're creating something magical and magnificent and unlike anything else out there. It might be a prime and ripe investment opportunity for those who are willing to go down a road that has not been explored yet and explore it with us. Because, I think Krzysztof had said, hundreds of billions of dollars by 2025. But right now, it's a $2 billion space with no competition in it, or very little. Now, that may change in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 4 years. But right now, we're on the edge, and we're diving in head first. So,
is there a way for people to like crowd fund that or crowd invest? What type of, if someone wanted to get in on the ground floor and invest in something like this, and maybe, they're thinking to get into movies, they're thinking maybe they need, to be millionaires and have millions and millions of dollars. I mean, what would, how little, I should say, or could people put up and maybe get, back behind something like this? Is there some place that I'm thinking of, like the real estate investment trust would kind of bring in a bunch of different investors to bring in money? Is there some sort of way to crowdfund that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So for our film, we are going to run a crowdfunding campaign very soon to also increase the number of content this company Think of Films, which I own, is producing. So that's one thing. But I think the most interesting thing, which Jim kind of touched upon, is this very unique situation on the market. So we have a situation which is the following: big giant companies investing in a platform, availability of a distribution platform, which is absolutely huge, which is Steam and Oculus. Steam is the biggest. Steam is the main market for games, and you can distribute your content through that platform. So there is no problem of distribution. With any film, you have a problem of how do you show it. Like the cinema has to dedicate time. There is zero problem of distribution. And there is no content. Okay? So it's amazing. If you create any content for that platform, it will be downloaded because there is no competition. it doesn't even matter how good the content is. Ours is amazing, thanks to Jim and Caroline. But I would encourage everybody to create content right now, because we are competing against maybe 2 or 3 projects in next year, and maybe 100 a year after, and not tens of thousands of projects, right? So, and it's such a unique experience that there is definitely, maybe for now a niche, but I think a large population which would like to try it, especially those who already have the headsets and just play games in it. They will do it. And we know for a fact that it works, because there is actually a documentary made recently called 0 Days VR, which somewhat uses a volumetric technology in one of the scenes, and it just got Emmy for originality of the invention. And it is very popular on Steam, despite the fact that it's a documentary, right? So it's not even a fiction content, which is typically more popular than documentaries in many cases. So I think for people who want to produce, it is way safer investment than, for example, making yet another feature film, which might fail at the box office.
Yeah, so you're basically saying that the platforms out there to distribute the content, and they don't have any content at the moment to distribute. So it's really kind of the perfect, I don't want to call it the perfect storm, but it's the perfect lining up events for somebody to get out and be at the forefront of this.
We're the first guys in Texas when oil's discovered. We're the only wildcatters there right now. In 2 years, there'll be 10,000 other wildcatters drilling for oil. But right now, think off films and this team, we're the first ones there, and we're way ahead of the competition. I just would like to chime in on, Krzysztof said we'll be setting up a crowdfunding page. When that is built and set up, we'll be sure to reach out to you so you can get that information, if you would not mind, to your subscribership and your podcast listeners and blog readers. And there'll be a wealth of information on the whys and where-to-fors of what we're doing and how they can get involved and how they can benefit from that.
So that crowdfunding, that won't be like a GoFundMe where they're donating money for something. That'll be something where people will actually be able to go and invest in back these movies and make a little bit of a profit, correct?
Yes, there will be an ability to make a profit, depending on an investment. We are planning to use the Indiegogo website, so it's really a crowdfunding, but we are open to other forms of investment. But what I wanted to stress, which is kind of maybe unusual, but that's I really think it is the essence of it. I didn't make this film as a financial investment. What I think, and it will be very bold what I'm saying, but what I think we are doing is we are making history. These experiences are the first in the new medium. So they will be remembered as the first short films of Brother Lumiere. And for me, this is more important as a professor of film. This is more interesting and important. So people who get engaged in them participate in something which will be a point in the history of entertainment or cinema. And there is basically, this is guaranteed because there is nothing yet done. So just because of being the first, we have a guaranteed spot in this history of cinema.
That's amazing. That's great. Anything else I should ask, or anything else that you guys want to add?
I would say that thank you so very much for hosting us, and thank you to your viewers and listeners for spending this hour of their life with us. And hopefully they'll keep coming back to listen to us a little bit more and share in these movies with us, because at the end of the day, storytelling is a shared experience between the storyteller and the audience, and that will never change. And that's something that's magical for all of us, no matter where you are in the world. Yes,
it is. And there's something about film that just appeals to us in movies and entertainment, kind of connects us and brings us all together. And hopefully maybe some of the listeners want to get involved in, financing it, from the people I've talked to in the industry. It's some risk. It's not a guaranteed thing, but if there's a way for maybe the people to put up a little bit of money and crowdfund it, that, when these movies, when movies do well, they typically, the multiples are pretty good. So now not every movie makes it, of course, but the ones that do, the multiples are pretty good. So, maybe if somebody has a little bit of play money and they want to back some great art, some great entertainment, that might be a nice option for them.
Yes, I agree. I actually invest my own money into it too. So I think it is worth the risk. It's definitely something completely new, but because of the platform availability, I think it might be a great potential.
Yeah, and that's always what you want to hear when you're looking at an investment, is you want to see the people are putting up their own money, because there's all kinds of people that have ideas on what you should do with other people's money. But it's good to have, people that are invested in it and believe in it and stand behind it. So I love what you guys are doing. I can't wait to get my virtual hands on this movie. I hope you guys come back and talk to us about it again and again. And we can geek out with more Star Treks and sci-fi info. I'm excited about this. So I want to thank you both very much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Rocky roll. Thank you.
I would like to thank our sponsor, JRC Insurance Group. JRC works with over 50 top-rated insurance companies to match their clients with the most affordable life insurance options available. They are working harder than anyone to get you the coverage you need and deserve for the price that suits your budget. Call 866-790-6494 or visit jrcinsurancegroup.com for your free, no-obligation quote. Again, call 866-790-6494 or visit jrcinsurancegroup.com for your free, no-obligation quote. Again, I would like to thank Jim Thalman, Krzysztof Pietroszek, Michael Dinich, and for myself, the Middle-Aged Money Man, I would like to thank you for tuning in again this week. Be sure to visit our webpage at twomoneyguys.com. Also follow us on Twitter at twomoneyguys. And Facebook, you can join our group at the Two Money Guys podcast group. Check us out. Also, check out all the links to the cool technology and follow everybody who was in this podcast in the show notes. We will have all the links in the show notes to everybody you heard here, as well as ourselves and all of the social media profiles. Till next week.